Hello viewers, my name is Damilare. In this lesson we'll be looking at the topic nervous coordination. Nervous coordination. The first word we have there is the word nervous. Nervous is from the word nerves, and we talk of nerves. These are special parts in our body doing the work of passing messages. They always pass message. That's nerves, meaning that messages must be passed in our system for the body to be coordinated. So those parts in our body that are doing this work of sending messages so that the body will be in harmony, those parts are called the nervous system. So for the nervous coordination to take place, we need the nervous system, which is made up of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. From the central nervous system, we have the one we call the brain, and we have the one we call spinal cord. Just like the president, which is the brain, and the vice president, which is the spinal cord. Both of them, we find them at Abuja, that's in Nigeria. So the central place in Nigeria is at Abuja, where we have the president representing the brain and the vice president representing the spinal cord. So we have to explore nervous system, starting with the definition. The nervous and the hormonal system, take note, they work together because they are both for coordination. They want the body to be organized. For hormonal, that means the one that will be releasing hormones, chemical substances to make sure the body is in order. But nervous system, that will be sending nerves instead of sending hormones. So this one will be sending nerves or neurons. Let's use the word neuron. So they'll be sending neurons as messengers to make sure the body is in order, while hormonal system will be sending hormones. You will see this in endocrine gland in one of my videos. So this nervous and hormonal system, they coordinate various biological activities in the body of multicellular animals. The basic structural units of nervous system is nerve cell, just as I said earlier. When you hear basic structural unit, that means the smallest of those parts that are doing the work of coordination in our body, the smallest of it is the nerve cell. Just like a building, a large building, the smallest part of this building is a block. So meaning that the block in a building of nervous system is called nerve cell. Just like also in biology, we still say cell is the smallest or the units of life. When you say human body, from a human body, the smallest is a cell. So meaning in nervous system, we have the nerve cell as the units of nervous system. We also call it neuron. Now, this consists of a dense cell body and protoplasmic processes called nerve fibers. That's talking about that neuron. Because when you look at the diagram of neuron, you'll be seeing something like this. The one they call dendrites. Those ones that are always sensitive to message, they send message, bring it to the cell body. The cell body is here where we have different nucleus. So that's the cell body. So these dendrites, they are always receiving signal, pass it to the cell body. Then from the cell body, they take it through this long fiber, which we call axon. Axon is a long fiber that passes message from that cell body, take it backward like this to the back part of the neuron. And take note, there are certain things that covers this axon. So those things, we call them myelin sheets, just like a wire that has insulator. So that is how this myelin sheet is also protecting the axon, so that when any message is going, it will be able to keep the message. So that is talking about the neurons. So this neuron, they said it has a cell body, which I've mentioned. This center part here is the cell body, and it's always dense, and it has protoplasmic processes called nerve fiber. Once you hear protoplasm, that's the nucleus and also the cytoplasm. Nucleus is one controlling the activities of the cell. Then we also have the cytoplasm, that's talking about the one that surrounds, that is also working with the nucleus. So we have that in the neuron. The main mechanism of information transfer is what? Electric impulse, meaning that they always send their message very fast, just like electricity. For example, when you place your leg on a nail, very fast you take your leg off the nail because it is like an electric impulse, fast message that will be sent. So that's how its information is being transferred, as electric impulse, which we call nerve impulses along that nerve fibers, the fiber I talked about in the neuron. All this nervous system in complex animals, they have the following: the central processing region, meaning that if there is a coordination, for example, the person that placed the leg on the nail, a message must be sent to the brain, just like the president reporting an issue in the state or in the country, reporting an issue. So the same way the brain will be reported to. The neuron will send the message to the brain about what is going on in the body, because the body must be coordinated. Another part, we said the nerves bringing impulses from receptors to the brain. Remember, the brain will receive the message, but where is the message coming from? That's from the receptors. For example, when you look at human being having different sense organs, such as the eye, the nose, the ear, the skin, the tongue. So all these 5 sense organs, they have what we call receptors, like always receiving message from the environment. For example, eye, when the eye sees insects coming, the eye will close, meaning that there is a receptor. From the word receptionist, who is a receptionist? Someone that always receives visitor. Maybe in a company, in an organization, they receive visitor. The same way, the eye has a receptor receiving information coming to the eye. The same way, the ear also receives information such as the sound coming to the ear. The tongue receives information of tastes. The skin receives information of sensation of maybe hotness, that's temperature, warmth, and the like. So all of them have what we call receptors, meaning that once sound is coming to the ear, the receptors will receive it and take it to the brain. So that is another thing that we have in nervous system. Apart from the brain receiving the message, the receptors will pass the message to the brain. Then the third thing is nerves carrying information from the brain to the effectors. Remember, it started from receptors taking it to the brain. For example, it's just like maybe there is an armed robbery going on in an environment like this, and this place is like a police station. So meaning this place where the armed robbery is taking place is where there is receptors. Like maybe there are some people in the environment watching that environment. They are receptors. They will take it to the police station representing the brain. Then from the police station, they will now send some set of people, that's the policemen, the sergeant, send them back to this particular place. So it means, and before they send them to this place, they would have tried to follow a route. The route they are following shows that there is effects. They want to go and effect a change. So mean that that's to the effector. Don't forget, from where the incident takes place, that's receptor, to the police station, that's the brain. Then going back, that's the effector, to effect a change. So the keywords are brain, receptor, effector. They are the one making the coordination possible. Now let's still look at sensory receptors. You have talked about receptors, those ones that will receive the information maybe from the eye, from the ear. So most of them, they are from sense organs, and that's why we call them sensory receptors. They are always very sensitive to what is going on in the environment. They detect stimuli. Stimuli is what is happening from the environment, external. And also it may be internal, anything that is happening inside the body or outside. So they are always sensing it. So they act as information collectors. So sensory receptors, like I said, where this armed robbery is taking place, the security personnel there, they are the sensory receptors. That means they notice what happened and when to report. So they are always information collectors. And I said they are found in our sense organs. Now, what of effectors? The one I said, from the PlayStation, there must be an effect, there must be a feedback. So the effectors, they are the muscles. That means the brain will send message to the muscles concerning what happened to the person's body. Remember, maybe the person places his leg on a nail. So placing one's leg on a nail, the muscle must also react. So the reaction of the muscle to that injury is as a result of the message from the brain. So the brain is the one sending message through that muscle. So that's why effectors, they are the muscles. The glands, we can also call glands effectors. That means those that from the police station, so where they can send message to, so that they can go and arrest the situation going on. So they are the effectors. So it means apart from the muscle, the glands can also be an effector that go into action. That means those that will take action as a result of what is going on outside. So go into action on receiving nerve impulse from the brain. So such actions include muscular contraction. Like I said, once there is injury, the muscle will contract, it will expand, try to respond to what is going on. The enzymes production. Maybe there is a kind of issue in the body, immediately enzyme can be produced. For example, you ate food. The food you ate, the tongue would have tasted it. It means it will send message to the brain that there's a particular food coming into the body. Then the brain can send message to the enzyme for the enzyme to be produced. So it means that's another effector. So it will send message to the gland so that the gland can release hormone if it is a hormone that is needed, or enzyme when it comes to food. So as I've said, hormone can be secreted. Maybe there is issue of danger outside. So the brain can send message to the adrenal gland so that it can release adrenaline. So all these work together so that there will be coordination. Now let's focus on central nervous system. Just like I used the headquarters of a particular country, like in Nigeria we have Abuja. So it means I can take Abuja as the central nervous system, because there in Abuja we have the president and we have the vice president. So let's explore this. From the central nervous system, we have the spinal cord, that's the vice president. The brain, that's the president. They are enclosed protectively, just like the president. They are always protecting them where they are. So enclosed protectively within what we call vertebral column. That's for the spinal cord. Remember, if you want to draw the brain has, let's just draw the caricature of it like this, so that the brain is just something like this. Okay, now from this place we can also draw the spinal cord following it, because the continuation of the brain is the spinal cord. So this is what make up the central nervous system, the brain and then the spinal cord. So I was now talking about this spinal cord, that what protect the spinal cord is vertebral column, and that's why when you look at the skeleton, you will see one long combination of bones like this. They are combined, so they are called vertebral column. So inside them we have this spinal cord. So all those vertebral column, that's the cervical in the neck, thoracic in the chest, lumbar, sacral and caudal. So these are the vertebral column protecting that spinal cord. Then for brain, the skull is the one that will now protect the brain. So looking at the central nervous system, in coordinating biological activities, it receives a constant input of impulses which keep it informed of changes in the animal's internal and external environment. So the brain, the spinal cord, every time message is being passed, so to and fro. Impulses, talking about message now, going to the central nervous system. That means any message that will go to the president and the vice president, they must surely come from receptors. Receptors meaning that from the eye, from the nose, from the ear, and they will be transmitted. That means before they get to the brain, they will follow a route. So that route is called sensory nerves, along sensory nerves, and are therefore known as sensory impulses. That message is a sensory impulse because it's coming from the sensory receptors. So those impulses coming from the central nervous system, now going to the effector. Don't forget, this one is a feedback. Now see effector as feedback. while receptor as the one that is reporting. So those impulses from the central nervous system to the effectors are known as motor impulse. So that's reporter now. Or just like from the police station, they want to go and arrest a situation. So that is a motor impulse, since they are transmitted along motor nerves. Now, another thing about the brain, looking at the size of brain, an average size brain for an adult weight is 1.2 to 1.4 kg. That's the weight of the brain. The brain consists of thousands of neurons. That means different messengers are inside the brain, just like the president. Imagine the kind of airtime that should be on the president's phone. So it will be huge amount, because the president needs to contact so many people. So the same way the brain has thousands of neurons. It is enclosed in the skull and covered by 3-layered membranes, just like different coverings, covering upon covering. So, and those membranes that cover brain, we call it meninges. And that's why anytime you hear the word menenge is talking about brain, just like meningitis. The itis means inflammation, when there is inflammation of the brain. So that's meninge. So anything meninge is brain. So don't forget those things that covers the brain, 3-layered membranes, they call them meninges. We have the outer dura. Outer dura is the one that covers it from the outside. The middle arachnoid, that's the one at the center of that brain. Then the inner pia mater, so that one is at the innermost part of the brain. The ventricles between layers of the meninges are filled with cerebrospinal fluid. That means there's something like liquid that will make the brain to flow, so that it will not be having friction. So the name of that fluid is cerebrospinal fluid, just like the amniotic fluid in the baby's environment inside the womb. So the same way there is a fluid in the brain called cerebrospinal fluid, working with the cerebrum of the brain, spinal of the spinal cord. So the brain consumes about 25% of body's oxygen supply, meaning that out of all the 100% oxygen coming to the body, the brain will take about 1/4, meaning that it will take the highest. So that's why the brain really needs enough air. So the brain has 3 regions. The regions are forebrain, middle brain, and hindbrain. We'll be looking at the structure later. Let's start with the forebrain. This is the most predominant part of the brain. Why is it the most predominant part? Because of the work it is doing. I always use the letter spellings of J, I, R, and L to remember the functions of this forebrain. The J means judgment. The cerebrum helps you to judge. We also have the I. I represents intelligence. It gives you intelligence. Once one is intelligent, it's the work of the cerebrum. Reasoning helps you to reason. The L, learning, helps you to learn. So all those seriousness in humans as a result of the cerebrum, Girl, just like girl, Girl, just change the G to J. So that's the functions of the cerebrum. So I'm looking at the structure of this cerebrum. This occurs in 2 halves. We have 2 halves of the cerebrum, and it is connected together. What joins them is through fibers called corpus callosum. So it's this corpus callosum that joins or connects the 2 halves of the cerebrum. So the halves are called cerebral hemisphere. It means we have one part of the cerebrum which is a cerebral hemisphere, another hemisphere again. So they now combine the 2 of them together. So 2 different cerebral hemisphere connected by corpus callosum. So each hemisphere is made up of 4 distinct lobes. That means when you look at one hemisphere, we have 4 lobes, which are the frontal. So it means we have the frontal. Let's look at this. Assuming this is the brain here, coming like this. So we have those ones that are in the frontal lobe. We have parietal, that means the one that is beside, that's parietal, close to the ear. We have the temporal. So the temporal is also close to the center of that parietal. Then the occipital, that's the one that is at the back. So these are the 4 indistinct lobes. Those lobes, they are indistinct, so there are different lobes. The one at the front, which is the frontal, the one at the back, occipital, the one beside parietal, then temporal at the center or close to the edge. The most active region of the cerebrum is the outer. The outer is the most active region of the cerebrum. Now, looking at this cerebrum, the most active region of the cerebrum we say is the outer layer, and they call it cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex, it is made up of gray matter. Take note, the outer layer of the brain, which is the cerebrum, is called is white, is gray matter, is gray in color. But when you go into the brain, you'll be seeing white. So take note of that. So the cortex is highly convoluted for increased surface area. So highly convoluted for increased surface area. The more convoluted the cortex, the more the cerebral capacity. So it means there is a space for accepting information in the brain. So it's more convoluted. That means enough space in the cortex of the brain so that it can have a great capacity. Then the cerebrum carries out its functions with each area specializing in a particular activity. The cerebrum can do the following. It can control all voluntary actions. Anything you intentionally do, that's the work of cerebrum. It can receive sensory information. When you sense something, when you see anything happening around, it can take all those sensory information. It can process that information for you, send response to you through the motor neurons so that it can go to the effectors. So still looking at cerebrum. Then the third thing, it is the seat of consciousness, seat of memory, learning, intelligence, reasoning, judgment. Like I said the other time, that J, I, R, and L, you can use it to remember. Then memory is also part of it, since it's also for intelligence. So that is for the cerebrum as one of the four brain. Then thalamus is also part of the four brain. What can we say about thalamus? This is oval, the shape of oval, just like egg. So oval shape. So that's thalamus. This is oval in shape. It acts as a relaying center. Relaying, where it relay or send message. So thalami, that's plural, receives sensory information, any sensitive information. This thalamus will receive it from the lower parts of the brain and then the spinal cord. So it will integrate it and pass it to relevant regions of the cerebral cortex. It helps to experience sensation. If you want to sense something, I sense that something is happening there, that's the work of thalamus. You can even use SAC to remember the function of thalamus. SAC, that means sensation, to sense something. Awareness, when you are aware that something is happening somewhere, it's work of thalamus. Then consciousness, when you are conscious of that something will soon happen now, so you are conscious. So that's sensation, awareness, and consciousness. That's the work of thalamus, which is still part of the four brain apart from cerebrum. Then we still have hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, when you hear hypo, anything that is below, that's hypo. So mean that it's below the thalamus. This is the region below the thalamus. What is the work? It controls the pituitary gland. Control the pituitary gland. Remember, the brain is the one that always activates glands to release hormones as a result of their feedback that's going to the effector. So that's why the hypothalamus is below that thalamus and is controlling pituitary gland. It can act mainly in the body homeostasis. So it can do the work of homeostasis, that is controlling the body temperature. So anything, if the temperature is too high, the hypothalamus will quickly signal so that the temperature can be worked on. Then water balance. If water is too much, there is a way it can stimulate the release of hormones. So water balance. And BP, if the blood pressure is high, there is a way it can send a signal. It also controls emotion. Maybe someone that is angry, that is frightened, that is joyful, it can help to control all this. Then It controls appetite and speech. It controls appetite. That means making you either to be hungry or not to be hungry. Even your speech, the utterance you bring out, so it helps you to control your utterances. So that's the work of hypothalamus. So if you want to remember, since sac was used for thalamus, you can also use, because this one is also for as a sex drive, that means to be stimulated sexually. So that's another work of hypothalamus, and it is also for speech, just as you have here an appetite. So you can say sat speech, or for sexual drive, then appetite, and T for temperature. So that's sat. Then also for sleep, you can say SATS. Now let's now look at the structure. Look at the structure of the brain here. From the brain, we can see the major internal part of the human brain. We have the cingulate sulcus, the corpus callosum, that means the one that covers all those regions, the diencephalon, the anterior commissure, temporal lobe, midbrain, pons, and medulla. So then the cerebellum is also there at the back. So that is for the brain. Now let's look at the midbrain. The midbrain, this one, the major work is to connect the forebrain and the hindbrain. It consists of optic lobes and the pineal body. Optic lobes, that means it has to do with the eye, or seeing for sight, and also the pineal body. So it can control reflex, that's involuntary action, connected with sight, like I said, optic for sight, hearing also for hearing. Then it is a link between the fore and the hindbrain. Since it's at the middle, we can link those two together. The hindbrain. The hindbrain consists of three parts. So talking about hind means at the back, we have cerebellum, we have the pons, we have the medulla oblongata. So that's for the hindbrain. Looking at the cerebellum, it has three parts. We have a central part that is connected to two lateral parts through the pons varolii. The cerebellum has three parts: a central part connected to two lateral parts through the pons. So the two lateral parts, we call them cerebellar hemisphere. Cerebellar hemisphere. So these are the two lateral parts that are connected through the pons varolii. So the cerebellum can control body posture, it coordinates muscular movements, it maintains the body balance. Meaning that anything that has to do with exercise is from the cerebellum. Now looking at medulla oblongata, which is the last aspect of the brain. From the medulla oblongata, this is the posterior, that means the one towards the end, posterior of the brain, and it continues into the spinal cord. Meaning that once you see the medulla oblongata, the next thing you see is the spinal cord. The spinal cord. So mean that is a continuation of the spinal cord. Unlike the cerebellum and cerebrum, the medulla oblongata, its own color is gray inside, inner gray matter, and outer will now be white. So what are the things it can do? It can control involuntary actions, like when you yawn, when you blink your eye. So it can control involuntary movement of the body. So especially those involved in respiration. You know, respiration is involuntary. When you are breathing, your heart beats, you are not the one controlling it. Digestion, after eating, you are not the one that will control the digestion. So they are all involuntary, controlled by medulla oblongata. It regulates BP, one's blood pressure, by controlling dilation. It will control dilation. It will also control constriction of blood vessels. That means determining when the blood vessel should be widened and when it should be reduced. So based on temperature also. So that is for the brain. So the second one is the spinal cord. So spinal cord, what can we say about spinal cord? This also consists of thousands of neurons. Just like the brain has thousands of neurons, this one also has thousands of neurons. Just like the vice president. You know, I said for the vice president, we'll be using the vice president as spinal cord, while the president is the brain. So they both have thousands of neurons, since they both do the same work, the president and vice president. So the vice will work when the president is not on seat. So they both have thousands of neurons, so which runs down the length of the neural canal. So this one always it runs down. So that is the spinal cord. It runs down the length of the neural canal, and that's at the back of the vertebrae. The spinal cord is enveloped within three-layer membrane called meninges. So meninges is what encloses the spinal cord. So a narrow canal, spinal canal runs down the center of the cord. So from spinal cord there is a canal, a hole inside, and there is the spinal canal is now going down the center. So the canal is also filled with a fluid. We also call it cerebrospinal fluid, just like the brain, meaning that both the brain and the spinal cord, they have a cerebrospinal fluid. The transverse section of the spinal cord shows a grayish region called the gray matter, surrounded by a lighter region called the white matter. As you can see from this drawing, so white is surrounding, gray is at the center. That's when you look at the transverse section of the spinal cord. Transverse, just like the way you cut your orange. So the gray matter is composed practically of all the cell bodies of the neurons in the spinal cord. Since the cell bodies are dense, and granular, so they give this region its typical grayish appearance. So the white matter consists of the nerve fibers of these cell bodies. Some of these fibers run along the spinal cord to the brain, connecting both together. So other fibers will leave the spinal cord to form the spinal nerves. So the spinal cord functions in the following ways. It can coordinate simple reflex action. So that's the major thing spinal cord is doing. Simple. You can use the S of the spinal cord coordinating simple reflex action. For example, when someone has a knee jerk, so the spinal cord can coordinate automatic reflex like sweating. So sweating, and that's another thing spinal cord is coordinating. It can send impulse also to the brain and response from the brain to the effectors. So that is for the spinal cord. So the next class we'll be looking at the peripheral nervous system. Thanks for listening.